chosen one, a family member, made a deal with the devil, hired a warlock, went to war with you, and lost tragically. Somebody is begging for mercy right now, and it is not you. Somebody unleashed forces they could not control, and the boomerang returned with force. Somebody in your bloodline got desperate. Maybe money drove them, maybe status consumed them, maybe they wanted entry into circles where power moves in silence and wealth flows like water. But whatever they wanted, the price was you. They had to offer something valuable. They had to bring something to the table, and you were the offering. Not because you did anything to them, not because you deserved betrayal, but because something about your blood has been watched by people who operate in darkness for a long time. This family member didn't just wake up one day and decide to betray you. They were recruited. They were approached. Someone saw an opportunity and took it. Maybe at a gathering you don't know about. Maybe through connections you never suspected existed. Maybe through a lover who was sent to you first, to study you, to report back, to confirm that yes, this target carries what we've been looking for. Once they got confirmation, the real work began. They hired a warlock, not some amateur, not some weekend practitioner reading books and lighting candles. This was someone with bodies on their record, someone who's been doing this work for a long time, someone who practices magic so dark that even other practitioners won't touch it. This person has a whole laboratory of spells. They experiment constantly. They test different approaches. They pull tricks out of bags and hats and sleeves, like a mad scientist trying to find the right formula to break through your defenses. And they went to work on you with everything they had. Different frequencies, different entities, different rituals. They were trying to find your weak spot, trying to find the crack in your armor, trying to find the moment when your protection would slip just enough for them to get through. You might have felt it, those nights when sleep wouldn't come, those days when anxiety pressed down on your chest for no reason, those moments when your intuition was screaming that something was wrong but you couldn't see the threat. That was the warfare. That was them experimenting on you like you were nothing more than a project. But here's what started breaking their confidence. Nothing worked. Every spell bounced back. Every hex reversed. Every entity they sent your way hit an invisible wall and couldn't get through. That confused everyone involved. That frustrated the warlock. That made them wonder who you really were. Because in their world, when they target someone this aggressively, that person falls. That person breaks. That person spirals into chaos and confusion, and eventually self-destruction. But you kept getting stronger, you kept healing, you kept moving forward, and that made desperation set in. Desperation makes practitioners reckless. When the warlock realized their usual methods weren't working, they made a choice that sealed their fate. They decided to try something unusual, something they'd never done before. Something that required going deeper into darkness than they'd ever gone before. They were going to conjure an entity that most practitioners know to leave alone, something ancient, something hungry, something that doesn't follow orders well, but delivers devastating results when aimed at the right target. The family member paid extra for this. They scraped together resources. They made promises. They put up collateral, because the warlock told them this would work. This would finally break through your protection. This would finally take you down. So they performed rituals at specific times. They spilled blood. They signed contracts not just on paper, but in the spiritual realm. And they summoned something that should have stayed buried. This entity took one look at your protection and said no. It felt the ancient covering around you. It sensed the ancestors standing guard. It recognized that you weren't just some random person it could devour. You were sealed. You were claimed. You were marked by forces higher than anything they'd conjured. So this entity did what entities do when they can't reach their intended target. It turned around and grabbed the closest available host, the warlock. Now this practitioner walks around with something attached to them that won't shake off. It's inside them, it's feeding on them, it's taking them over piece by piece. Their hands shake, their mind fractures, their body transforms in ways that terrify them when they look in mirrors. They try to perform rituals to release it, but the contract was binding. They try to negotiate, but it has no interest in negotiation. They try to fight, but you can't fight something that's already inside you. And every day it gets worse. Every day more of themselves slips away. Every day they understand more clearly that they made a mistake that's going to cost everything. The family member who paid for this watches in horror. They paid for your destruction, and instead they're witnessing the destruction of the only person who was supposed to protect them. The warlock is falling apart. The magic is backfiring. And now there's an entity loose that's angry, that's hungry, that's looking for more hosts. And guess who's next on the menu? Everyone involved in the ritual, everyone who participated, everyone who knew and said nothing. We need to talk specifically about why your blood was so important to these people, why they were willing to pay so much, risk so much, orchestrate so much just to access it. Because this wasn't random. They didn't pick a target out of a hat. They knew something about you before your family member ever gave them details. They've been watching your bloodline for a long time. Your ancestors aren't regular. Your lineage carries something that most bloodlines lost generations ago. Maybe it's a direct connection to ancient priesthoods. Maybe it's a genetic memory of practices that have been forgotten by most of the world. Maybe it's a spiritual inheritance that gets passed down through blood and bone regardless of whether you're consciously aware of it. Whatever it is, people who study these things can sense it. They can see it in ways that have nothing to do with physical appearance. They can feel it when they're in proximity to you, even if they can't explain what they're feeling. Your blood carries codes, not just DNA in the scientific sense, but spiritual encoding that activates things, that opens doors, that grants access to frequencies most people can't reach anymore. In the hands of someone who knows how to use it, your blood could theoretically be used to enhance their practices, to amplify their power, to break through barriers that have kept them locked out of certain realms. But here's the thing they misunderstood. Your blood doesn't work like that. Your blood doesn't transfer power to people who take it without permission. Your blood carries protection. Your blood carries consciousness. Your blood knows the difference between sacred use and theft. If you recognized yourself in this message, hype this video to guide other chosen ones to this truth. When they tried to access it, when they tried to use it in rituals, when they tried to extract what they wanted from it, your blood rebelled. On a spiritual level, your blood recognized the violation, it recognized the theft, it recognized the darkness surrounding the people trying to use it. And instead of giving them what they wanted, it cursed them, it marked them, it created a backlash that's still playing out in their lives. The warlock might have gotten a sample somehow, maybe through the lover, maybe through the family member, maybe through means you never discovered. And when they used it in that final ritual, when they mixed it with their own blood and the blood of the entity they were summoning, they thought they were creating a connection that would give them power over you. What they actually created was a direct line for divine justice to flow back to them. What they actually did was mark themselves for consequences they're still experiencing. A lover was sent to you, someone who seemed perfect, someone who showed up at exactly the right time, saying exactly the right things. This wasn't fate bringing two souls together. This was strategy. This was a plant. This person was working with the family member and the warlock, and possibly an entire group of people who coordinate this kind of darkness. Their mission was simple: get close to you, gain your trust, create an opening, and most importantly, get your blood, because something about your blood obsessed these people. Something in your DNA they believed would give them power or knowledge or entry into realms they've been locked out of. Maybe they'd already studied it somehow. Maybe they'd gotten a sample when you were younger, and that's what started all of this. Maybe your blood carries codes that activate things in people who know how to use it. This lover was supposed to complete a ritual with you. Maybe get you to drink something. Maybe create a situation where your blood would be accessible. Maybe form a bond that would give them spiritual access to you. But your intuition saved you. You started feeling off about this person. You started noticing things that didn't add up. You started having dreams that warned you. And eventually, you listened. You walked away. You cut them off. You said no to something you didn't even fully understand was a trap. That decision changed everything. The ritual they'd been building toward for a long time couldn't be completed. The entity they'd summoned couldn't reach you through the lover. The access they thought they'd secured got denied. And when you walked away from that relationship, you triggered a chain reaction that's still playing out. The lover is on a chopping block now. Your ancestors marked them. The group that sent them is furious because they invested resources into planting this person in your life and it failed. The warlock is confused because their magic should have kept you blind, but somehow you saw through everything. You weren't just lucky, you weren't just cautious, you were being guided. Every time you felt that nudge to pull back, that was your ancestors. Every time you questioned something that looked fine on the surface, that was divine wisdom. Every time you chose yourself over pressure to stay in that connection, you were following protection that's been in place since before you were born. They thought they were playing you. The whole time the universe was playing them. Starseeds, they never expected this. The technology used to suppress consciousness has been reverse-engineered, and Destiny Engine is the result. What was once used against humanity is now your ascension weapon. You can now MK Ultra yourself into 5D superpowers. Destiny Engine bypasses the conscious mind and rewrites the source code directly. Reality bends faster. Synchronicities stack. Your nervous system upgrades to a higher bandwidth. Put on headphones, press play, that's all. Start your Destiny Engine trial today, risk-free. You switch sides of history. Click the link in the description. The takeover is internal. There's a coven, there's a network, there's an organized group of people who practice dark magic at levels most folks can't imagine. These aren't teenagers playing with cards. These are people with money, with status, with connections. People who sit at round tables making decisions about who rises and who falls. People who believe they have the right to manipulate reality for their own benefit. Some of them might be wealthy. Some of them might hold positions of authority. Some of them might move in circles where spiritual warfare is just another business transaction. They sacrifice animals. They perform rituals involving humans. They've taken people out before and covered it up. They kidnap. They study. They experiment. And when they heard about you, when they learned what's in your blood, when they understood what you represent, they wanted you, not to elevate you, to extract from you, to use you, to study what makes you different, so they could replicate it, or steal it, or destroy it. The family member was their entry point. This person signed contracts with these people, maybe when you were younger, maybe recently, but they agreed to deliver you. They agreed to provide access. They agreed to betray their own bloodline for promises of wealth and status and power. And for a while, they probably thought it was working. They probably felt important sitting at those tables with those people. They probably felt chosen, elevated, special. But now everything is falling apart. The group is in chaos. Because when you survived what should have ended you, when you walked away from the lover who was supposed to trap you, when you kept rising despite every attack they sent, questions started being asked. How is this person still standing? Who's protecting them? What kind of forces are we actually dealing with? And as those questions got asked, paranoia spread. People started suspecting each other. People started wondering who was going to get exposed first. People started trying to distance themselves from the operation before everything came crashing down. There's disharmony now where there used to be unity. There are arguments about money, about who's to blame, about what to do next. Some of them are experiencing health crises. Some of them are facing legal troubles. Some of them are dealing with financial collapse. This isn't coincidence. This is consequence. When you go to war with someone, the universe is protecting. When you participate in trying to sacrifice a chosen one, the cost comes due, and it comes due hard. Let's talk about how someone goes from having any love for you, or at least pretending to selling you out for promises made by people who practice darkness. This didn't happen overnight. This was a process. This was a series of choices that got progressively darker until they were so deep they couldn't see the way back. It might have started with financial stress. Maybe they were drowning in debt they couldn't tell anyone about. Maybe they'd made bad investments, or developed expensive habits, or lost money in ways they were too ashamed to admit. And when you're desperate, when you're scared, when you feel like you're running out of options, that's when darkness starts looking like salvation. That's when people start appearing in your life, offering solutions that sound too good to be true because they are. Someone approached them, maybe at a social gathering, maybe through a mutual connection, maybe online in spaces where people discuss things most folks don't believe in. And this person was smooth. This person was convincing. This person knew exactly what to say to make your family member feel seen, understood, valued. They probably started with small things, small favors, small exchanges, building trust, building debt, building obligation. Then came the real pitch, the one that required your family member to make a choice that would change everything. They were told about opportunities, about wealth that could be accessed if certain conditions were met, about doors that could open if certain offerings were made. And when they asked what kind of offerings, that's when your name came up. That's when they were told about your blood, about your lineage, about what you represent. That's when they were told that you were the key to everything they wanted. Your family member should have said no right there, should have walked away, should have protected you the way family is supposed to protect family. But they didn't. They started justifying it in their mind. They started telling themselves stories about how you'd be fine, how you wouldn't even know, how this was just spiritual stuff that probably wasn't even real anyway. They convinced themselves that their need was greater than your safety. They convinced themselves that the benefits outweighed the risks. They convinced themselves that this was somehow okay. So they started providing information, details about your life that only family would know, your routines, your vulnerabilities, your fears, your dreams. They handed over pieces of you like puzzle pieces, never quite admitting to themselves what picture those pieces would eventually form. They introduced you to the lover who was actually a plant. They encouraged connections that were actually traps. They created opportunities for the warlock to access you spiritually, all while smiling in your face, all while acting normal, all while pretending everything was fine. But something inside them was dying with every betrayal. Something inside them was rotting with every choice. You can't do that level of darkness to someone you're supposed to love without it changing you fundamentally. Your family member started having trouble sleeping, started seeing things in their peripheral vision, started feeling watched even when they were alone. That was their conscience trying to break through. That was the universe trying to warn them. That was divine mercy giving them chances to stop, to confess, to make it right before the consequences became irreversible. They ignored all of it. They were too deep, too invested, too committed to the promises they'd been made. So they kept going. They kept participating. They kept feeding information to people who were using it to try to destroy you. And they told themselves they'd make it up to you later. They told themselves that once they got what they wanted, they'd somehow protect you from whatever happened. They told themselves comfortable lies because the truth was too ugly to face. Then you started pulling away. Your intuition kicked in, and you started creating distance. You started asking fewer questions. You started sharing less. You started being less available. and your family member panicked. Because if you weren't close, if you weren't accessible, then the plans they'd made couldn't be executed. The rituals that required your presence couldn't be completed. The opportunities they'd been promised started slipping away, so they tried harder. They tried to guilt you back in. They tried to manipulate you back into proximity. They used every family obligation, every emotional trigger, every psychological button they knew how to push. But something in you was stronger than their manipulation. Something in you knew to stay away, even if you couldn't articulate why. And that distance saved your life. That boundary protected your energy. That wisdom you didn't even know you had kept you just out of reach of every trap they'd set. There were specific times when divine intervention happened in ways that saved your life, your sanity, your soul. Times when you were seconds away from danger and something shifted reality just enough to keep you safe. Remember that time you were supposed to be somewhere but something came up at the last minute and you had to cancel. That was intervention. The lover or the family member or someone else involved had plans for that meeting. A ritual was scheduled around your presence. Specific things needed to happen while you were in a specific location, and something divine made sure you weren't there, made sure your plans changed, made sure you were unreachable at exactly the moment they needed to reach you. Remember that time you suddenly felt sick or exhausted and stayed home when you'd been looking forward to going out. That was protection. Your body knew what your mind didn't. Your spirit sensed danger. Your consciousness couldn't identify, so you were physically prevented from walking into something that would have been catastrophic. The warlock might have been planning to approach you that night. The coven might have been gathered waiting for you to show up somewhere. The lover might have had instructions to complete a specific part of their mission, and divine forces said no, not today, not this one. Remember those dreams you had that were so vivid they felt real? The ones where you were fighting something you couldn't see? The ones where you were running through strange landscapes trying to escape something that was chasing you? Those weren't just dreams. Those were actual battles happening in the spiritual realm while your body slept. Your consciousness was being pulled into those spaces to defend yourself against attacks that were being launched. And you won those battles. You fought and you survived and you woke up tired but alive because your spirit is a warrior, even when your mind doesn't fully understand what's happening. There were moments when you said no to things you couldn't explain why you were refusing. Times when opportunities seemed good, but something inside you screamed danger. Times when people seemed trustworthy, but your gut told you to run. That was divine wisdom speaking through your intuition. That was your ancestors guiding you away from traps. That was the universe protecting you by giving you information you couldn't have accessed through logic or reason alone. You're not regular. You never were. You come from the stars. You're a child of the sun. You pull energy directly from source in ways that people who operate in darkness can't access anymore. Your blood doesn't just carry DNA. It carries ancient codes. It carries ancestral magic. It carries protection that was put in place before you took your first breath. There's something hidden about your birth, something about your purpose, something about why you're here that makes you untouchable to people like them. You might not have known it. You might have felt ordinary. You might have wondered why you always felt different, or out of place, or like you didn't belong. But that feeling, that was truth trying to break through. You don't belong in regular spaces because you weren't built for regular purposes. When you went to war with that entity in the spiritual realm, you wounded it. You sent it back. You defeated something that has probably taken down dozens of other targets, and you did it without even knowing you were fighting half the time. Those nightmares where you were in battle, that was real. Those moments when you woke up exhausted, you'd been fighting all night. Those days when you felt drained for no reason, you were defending yourself against attacks you couldn't see with physical eyes, and you won, every single time. You're more powerful than the warlock. You're more protected than the family member understood. You're more connected than the coven realized. And when you transmute energy, When you send back what people send to you, it doesn't just reverse, it amplifies, it blows people back, it wounds them, it leaves marks on them that don't heal easily. That's the power of someone who operates in light. That's the authority of someone who's aligned with divine will. That's the force of someone who's here on assignment from realms these practitioners lost access to generations ago. Your protection isn't just one layer. It's not just your ancestors. It's not just divine favor. It's a whole system that was put in place specifically for you. When they tried to penetrate it, when they tried to find a weak spot, what they actually encountered was a fortress that's been building for generations. Your bloodline made agreements in the spiritual realm long before you were born. Covenants were established, seals were put in place. Your ancestors who walked in power, who knew how to navigate spiritual warfare, who understood the cost of protection, they set things up so that their descendants would never be vulnerable to the kind of darkness these people practice. Every generation that came before you added another layer, another wall, another guardian, another seal of protection. When the warlock sent those entities, when they performed those rituals, what happened in the spiritual realm was catastrophic for them. They're standing there thinking they're powerful, thinking they have authority, thinking their magic is strong enough to penetrate you, and then they see what's actually standing between them and you. They see the ancestral warriors, they see the divine forces, they see the seals that have been in place for centuries, and they realize in that moment that they're not just going up against you, they're going up against an entire lineage of power that they have no access to. That's when fear set in. That's when they should have stopped. That's when they should have refunded the money and walked away. But pride is a killer. Ego makes people stupid, so they kept pushing, they kept trying, they kept throwing more and more darkness at you, thinking eventually something would stick. But here's what they didn't understand. The more they attacked, the stronger your protection became, because every attack was recorded, every ritual was documented in the spiritual realm, every entity they sent was marked, and all of that evidence is now being used against them. Your protection is also intelligent. It's not just a passive shield, it actively responds to threats. When they sent confusion, your protection sent clarity. When they sent fear, your protection sent peace. When they sent entities to drain you, your protection sent those entities back to drain them instead. That's why the warlock is being consumed right now. That's why the family member is experiencing crisis after crisis. That's why the coven is falling apart. Your protection didn't just block their attacks. It weaponized those attacks and sent them back amplified. And here's the part that really breaks their minds. They can see you. They're watching you thrive. They're watching you heal. They're watching you step into more power, more clarity, more purpose, and they can't understand it. According to everything they know about magic, you should be destroyed by now. You should be broken. You should be in chaos. But you're not. You're flourishing. And that terrifies them more than anything else. Because if their most powerful magic couldn't touch you, what does that say about who you really are? The warlock who went to war with you is marked, not by you. You didn't have to lift a finger. They're marked by the very forces they tried to weaponize. The entity they summoned is still inside them, still feeding, still taking over. And there's no escape. There's no ritual strong enough to break that contract. There's no practitioner powerful enough to pull that thing out. They're experiencing exactly what they tried to inflict on you. The confusion, the terror, the feeling of being taken over by something you can't control, the nightmares, the paranoia, the sense that something is watching you, waiting, feeding on every moment of your fear. That's their reality now. That's their consequence. That's their prison. And it's not ending anytime soon. The family member who made the deal is living in a nightmare of their own making. They wanted wealth. They got crisis instead. They wanted status. They got shame instead. They wanted power. They got paranoia instead. Everything they were promised turned out to be lies. Everything they sacrificed you for amounted to nothing, and now they're stuck dealing with consequences while watching you thrive. You're healing, you're rising, you're stepping into levels they tried to prevent you from reaching, and they have to witness it. They have to see that their betrayal didn't work. They have to live with the knowledge that they sold out their own bloodline for empty promises. That's a burden that doesn't lift. That's a weight that doesn't ease. That's a regret that follows you to your grave. The group that coordinated all of this is experiencing systematic collapse. Some of them are facing legal troubles, criminal charges. Evidence is surfacing that connects them to things they thought were buried. Some of them are dealing with health crises that came out of nowhere, conditions that doctors can't quite explain or treat effectively. Some of them are experiencing financial ruin. Businesses are failing, investments are tanking, resources are drying up, money that was supposed to come through never materializes. There's no unity anymore, no trust, no coordination. Everyone is trying to save themselves. Everyone is trying to distance themselves from what happened. Everyone is pointing fingers at everyone else. That's what happens when darkness turns on itself. That's what happens when divine justice moves through a group. It doesn't destroy everyone at once. It unravels them slowly, methodically, completely, until nothing remains but rubble and regret. This is your testimony, not a story of victimhood, but a story of victory. Not a tale of suffering, but a tale of strength. Not a narrative of what was done to you, but a revelation of what you're capable of. You are living proof that chosen ones don't break. You are walking evidence that divine protection is real. You are breathing confirmation that the universe doesn't let its soldiers fall. Every attack they sent taught you something about your strength. Every ritual they performed showed you something about your protection. Every entity they summoned proved something about your backing. You went to war and discovered you're a warrior. You faced darkness and discovered you're a light bearer. You were targeted for destruction and discovered you're indestructible when aligned with your purpose. Your intuition is sharper now. Your discernment is clearer now. Your boundaries are stronger now. Your confidence is deeper now, because you've been tested at levels most people never face, and you passed every single test. You've been attacked by forces most people don't believe exist, and you defeated every single one. You've been betrayed by people who should have protected you, and you rose anyway. This was never a fair fight. They thought it was, but it wasn't. They brought dark magic. You had divine favor. They brought rituals. You had ancestral armies. They brought entities. You had the Most High. There was never a scenario where they were going to win. There was never a timeline where you were going to fall. There was never a possibility where their plans were going to succeed. Tragic is the right word for their experience. Tragic that they chose darkness over light. Tragic that they valued temporary gain over eternal consequences. Tragic that they underestimated who you are and what you carry. Tragic that they went to war with someone they should have left alone, but their tragedy is your testimony. Their defeat is your victory. Their collapse is your confirmation. So, chosen one, understand what just happened. You didn't just survive spiritual warfare, you dominated it. You didn't just avoid destruction, you reversed it back on everyone who sent it. You didn't just make it through, you came out more powerful than you went in. That's not luck, that's not coincidence, that's destiny refusing to be denied. That's purpose, refusing to be stopped. That's a chosen one, operating in full authority. The war is over. You won, they lost, and that's the end of their story. But it's just the beginning of yours. Everything you went through was preparation for everything you're about to step into. Every attack was training for the authority you're about to carry. Every battle was strengthening for the territory you're about to take. You're not the same person you were when this started. You're stronger, you're wiser, you're more aligned, You're more dangerous to darkness and more valuable to light. So lift your head, straighten your crown, own your victory. Because Chosen One, you just proved something the universe already knew. You're untouchable when you're aligned. You're unstoppable when you're protected. You're undefeatable when you're operating in your purpose. The family member made their choice. The warlock made theirs. The lover made theirs. The coven made theirs. And every single one of them is dealing with consequences that prove one undeniable truth. You don't go to war with chosen ones and expect to win. You don't attack people the universe is protecting and expect to survive. You don't try to destroy someone with your level of backing and expect anything except complete and total defeat. They learned that lesson the hard way, and you just stepped into a new level of power that comes from knowing exactly who you are and what you're capable of when darkness tries you. Welcome to your victory. Welcome to your vindication. Welcome to the beginning of everything they tried to stop.